Now, welcome to another edition of News from Naboo with Thor's Lightning Takes. And let's get right to the news.
All right, today we're going to kind of talk about some interviews that D. Bradley Baker and Michelle Ang from The Bad Batch have been out there doing their press rounds, and information's been coming out. This is kind of a collection of interviews that was gathered up by Star Wars Newsnet that we're going over. First up, speaking with comicbook.com, Michelle Ang kind of explained Omega's evolution from Season 1 to Season 2, saying there's a time jump between where Season 1 left off and where Season 2 begins, and Omega shed some of her childlike wonder. We're moving a little bit into adolescence. We're moving into a space where Omega wants to have her views heard, wants to have a voice, and I think what's interesting is she's very much secure in her place in the Bad Batch. Season 1 meant that sometimes she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be considered part of the squad, but Season 2, right from the jump, you get the impression she's very comfortable with the Bad Batch, and they absolutely value her, and she has her own merits and skills that she adds to the squad.
Strange, because I felt like the first two episodes there, our two-parter was kind of reestablishing that she was okay, as if there was some kind of doubt and skepticism. And then she kind of did have some childlike wonder again, which I think is good.
She still has some, definitely.
Yeah, so she's making it sound like when we pick up, that's all like done and over with. Yet it was kind of like a reiteration in those first couple episodes. I thought
she definitely still has the childlike wonder with the kaleidoscope.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a war chest.
Yeah,
you know.
Oh, you do a pretty good Omega there.
What bothers me is this: how much time has passed between Season 1 and Season 2.
I don't think that much time has passed.
Well, there's two different stories here. Michelle Ang, who voices Omega, has done an interview where she said 6 months has passed.
Yeah, I think that's what I remember hearing.
One of the producers did an interview that said 2 months has passed.
Okay. Yeah, it feels more like 2 months. Feels more like it could have actually been the next day.
No, she does look a little bit older.
Well, yeah, they reference that they've been doing missions.
How long has she been studying?
Yeah. Yeah, there are indications it's been at least a little while.
I feel like it's been more than 2 months, though.
I think she looks a little older. I mean, I'd have to kind of look at the two images next to each other, and I don't know. I guess she looks a little older. And again, there are some references by the Bad Batch about we've been doing these missions, and she's been studying, and clearly she's more capable now in that first battle against the giant crabs.
Because she's also been training with her bow thing.
Yeah,
light bow.
Yeah, laser bow.
Comicbook.com actually asked Ang about the possibility of playing Omega as an adult. She said, "The true answer is absolutely I would love to go on that journey of Omega, but I would also like to say that I don't want her to grow up too fast. Season 1 to Season 2 was a big jump." Skeptical there. Big jump, 2 months. "It was a good jump, but the journey that she is on in adolescence, in drawing an identity of who she is, but also who the clones are, now that, and how the Bad Batch are her brothers, how they fit into the Empire's worldview of clones. I don't want to rush that. I think that's incredibly juicy and exciting. Maybe this is a bit fatalistic of me. I think as everyone grows in adulthood, there's a certain element of jadedness, and I think Omega's superpower, at least at this point, is the fact that she isn't. So she really has a novel way to view adult themes, and that's been a joy. I think it's a nice voice for Omega currently in the Star Wars world, so I wouldn't want her to lose that too fast."
Well, if we do a little calculating here, we kind of figure the Bad Batch doesn't have a happy ending. We don't see them in the time of the... I mean, just because we don't see somebody doesn't mean they're not around doing their thing. It's kind of frustrating sometimes when people are like, well, we didn't see them in the original trilogy. Well, we didn't see a lot of characters in the original trilogy, right? It focused on, the certain core. So just because we don't see the Bad Batch around doing their thing doesn't mean they're not still alive. However...
But they would be old.
Well, yeah, I mean, the clone advancing, aging, and all these things, too. But just because they weren't there doesn't mean they're not around. Yet I get the feeling that they weren't around.
Because why would Rex not call them in for that big of a mission?
Yeah, it feels like Rex would have gotten in touch with them unless they had left the rebellion, assuming they get involved with the rebellion, which I think they do. And I'm kind of going around in circles here.
But what if they were causing a huge distraction somewhere else to try and... help?
Well, sure. My point is it probably doesn't end well for the Bad Batch, but I don't see Omega dying at the end of this series, so it's going to be an interesting catalyst to the next part of her story, right? What happens to the Bad Batch to, move Omega into her next story?
What I find very interesting in her little spiel there is she talked about how the world, how the Republic views, the Empire, how they view the clones after the war. I mean, think of it. The every day-to-day citizens now like, oh, we've got all these extra people now. I mean, they were just dispensable soldiers to some of the people of the Republic. Reasons that they weren't getting conscripted into fighting in the war. So how does the Republic view the clones? Could this be something they're exploring later in the season? I know we see the Senate chamber, we see the cloning facilities blown up and everything. I want to know how the people of the Empire view clones.
Probably as expendable war veterans on the street, like we kind of see in Kenobi. So one of the things I liked about Kenobi is that you just saw this clone kind of begging for money, and it's like, that's probably what the few who kind of survive and go on are, what they have in store. But going back to Omega, keeping in mind she's being trained by the Bad Batch by this highly skilled force, that we don't know what happens to them, I see this character probably becoming a female-type Boba Fett character down the road.
I could see that.
She's getting the training. She's probably going to have a bad ending to the Bad Batch story. And, she's going to
continue on with the skills she
has.
has.
She's basically Boba Fett, right? I mean, all the clones are Jango, essentially. I mean, she's basically has that skill set, if not more skill set than Boba has. So I see her kind of becoming that kind of character who will maybe confront Boba Fett someday and have an interesting story there. I don't know.
I would really like to see that, honestly.
I think that, the Book of Boba Fett would have been better if it had been maybe Omega versus Boba Fett over whatever it was.
Could have been really interesting.
Yeah,
sure.
I know some are going to kind of balk at the idea
different
of
life experiences.
Yeah.
Him as a cutthroat bounty hunter, and we don't even know where she's going to end up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
For her training. I mean, he was trained by other bounty hunters and his dad.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want to see Omega become the cutthroat bounty hunter, but I think it kind of makes sense. He does have that. If she's an unaltered clone, she's probably down deep got that Jango Boba kind of personality, right? Mm-hmm. And she has the training from the Clone Force 99 and whatever modifications they've done to her DNA to make her a little bit better. So she should be a capable bounty hunter someday in theory, right?
Mm-hmm. D. Bradley Baker also spoke with comicbook.com, kind of talking about what his favorite episodes from the season are, referencing what is everyone's calling the pod racing episode, because all we've seen is we know that it looks like Tech's going to be riding around in a pod racer at one point.
Cool. Yeah. Hey, I want a pod racing series. Just follow the circuit around. I was kind of hoping that was what Resistance was going to be.
With the flying aces. That was horrible.
Resistance needed to focus on one or the other. Either all the flying aces or the spy stuff. It mixed the two, and it's like, I don't know. Or that. Yeah.
All right, but what he said is, right out of the gate, I just love the pod race episode with Tech. I thought that was really fun, and it's like, I know this guy, and I like this guy a lot more now because he's able to jump in there and do something you wouldn't really think that he would do, and it was fun. It was just fun.
I am going to be very disappointed if at no point in that episode he says, now this is pod racing.
It's not his line.
In a very Tech-like way.
He did not say it, no. And on the other side, I think, for me, the most meaningful and affecting was the Outpost episode with Crosshair, to see how he's taken to the limits of his extreme in a heartbreaking way.
Well, he's just kind of tossing out the spoilers, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. But
not like major ones, but anyway, I guess when you're all the clones, I am all the clones.
But that plays out as this very personal climb to a revelation, to a moment, to a break, and to bring his character, who's typically tough and kind of grumpy and not saying very much, to this state of transformation or revelation. For me, it's like, wow, I think I actually like him the best now. He's the most compelling and interesting character of all of them. And I love them all very much. But to bring that out in Crosshair, I think fans are really going to go nuts for it. It's really a fascinating journey that he is on.
He is not wrong, and that is one of the problems of the show, that Crosshair is by far the most interesting of them.
That's because he did something so what seems out of character for the clones in general.
Yeah. Well, he's always been the more detached and kind of colder of the crew. I mean, always. Like, in the one story arc we got before this, he was, I guess I feel like always, because we saw that years ago. We saw it in the rough animation, so I feel like we've known the character a long time. But yeah, he's the most interesting by far, and that's kind of the problem with the show.
Then he spoke with Collider and explained some of the main themes that Season 2 will explore, saying, the key thesis to the season, to me, is that the Empire is growing bigger and there's nowhere to run or hide. And that plays out for Omega, as it does for the Bad Batch, as it does for Crosshair, and these are the larger realities of the Star Wars canon that are locking into place and coming into play, and it's spectacularly great Star Wars as far as I'm concerned. I just love it. He's right. I mean, he knows where Star Wars has to head.
Yeah.
We have to head to this darker place in the Star Wars history. And it's cool to see it get there.
Yeah, we are heading to the true dark times. I mean, they're on the cusp of things getting really bad.
Mm-hmm. He also talked about with the film collective how he does his recording process. He reads straight through, beginning to end of the script. I kind of had this impression that he would read through the lines as one character, then read through the lines as the next. They say if it's a character he hasn't done in a long time, like Cody, he will listen to lines first to kind of capture that spark that makes Cody sound like Cody, or Rex sound like Rex. But he reads the entire thing through top to bottom.
Interesting.
With one exception, if they're yelling. Like, he says if Wrecker is yelling or there's a lot of screaming and stuff during the fights, he saves all that to the end because you don't want to wreck your voice in the middle of line reading.
You don't want to wreck your voice by Wrecker.
Well, think about it. If he's reading through the lines where Hunter and Wrecker are fighting the bad guys, and then goes to like a conversation between Tech and Echo, his voice is going to be a little bit strained. Yeah. And as a veteran in the business, he understands
he's a veteran,
when to protect his voice and to save stuff like screaming and yelling lines for the end.
They probably just let him go in there and record and do his thing. Like, what kind of direction do you give D. Bradley at this point?
Most episodes are literally just him and Michelle Ang in a room.
I mean, they are.
She's having a conversation with him and him and him.
Yeah, that's got to be weird, too. He's always responding, but in different voices.
Yeah, so, his big trick, saving yelling for last, which apparently is usually Wrecker.
that sums up Wrecker's character very well.
In a heartbeat, in a nutshell.
Yelling. Yes, and lifting heavy stuff. And being afraid of heights, too.
Being afraid of heights.
That is his characterization. I'm afraid of heights.
All right, for our second little article piece here today, this is kind of a fun collector piece. Just recently now, over 300 original Star Wars action figures were found in a collector's closet in Chicago.
How does that happen?
So this collector, when they're dubbing this find the Murphy find, this collector apparently collects like coin-operated vending machines and things. Like that's what they've been collecting for years.
Oh, yeah, like me. I got a whole room
and they were at a convention or something where they sell those types of items, and he got talking to somebody else who he's a friends with about the Star Wars figures he has. And they're like, well, send us pictures. And you find out that he had in the Kenner box, figures.
On card.
From 1977 to 1985.
Yeah, he's got original vintage.
The other collector's like, I'm sure he just has a bunch of the new stuff. No, he has OG stuff.
How do you not know what you have in this day and age, especially if you are on any kind of collector scene?
Maybe he didn't realize he had it yet. If he found it. How do you
forget you bought hundreds of action figures?
If it's not in your wheelhouse, though, do you really think how much of these old toys worth?
Yes.
You do.
Well, no, he's a collector of, you said coin-operated, whatever. That's cool. I don't mean to mock it or anything. It's not something I'm into. I was joking. But how do you collect something and not understand that there's probably value in other things? It's not like Star Wars is like off the radar, right?
Well, it's just something maybe you just don't think about, I guess. I mean, you had them in a closet for who knows how long. It's like if I went back through my Beanie Baby collection, I wouldn't immediately think, I need to check eBay to see if any of these are worth anything. Yes, you would, though. No, because some of them I just
most of them, but you already know ahead of time that most of them probably aren't worth a dime. You wouldn't know. Like all I'm saying is you bought cases of action figures back in the day. You have a closet with 300 of them in there.
Maybe he had a bunch of stuff in front of the closet and then just recently moved stuff.
Come on. I don't know. It's such a strange story. It's every now and then you hear about these stories about collections that are found by somebody who forget they had them.
He even has multiples of the Luke Skywalker with double telescoping lightsaber from the early bird packaging.
Which is
Those
funny.
are worth like $20,000 a piece.
We were talking about the other night on the voice chat too. We were talking about collecting a little bit and how that's one of the rarest figures. It's up there with the rocket firing Boba Fett.
He also has
Anakin,
the original Death Commander, which got pulled because the manufacturer said the word death was unsuitable for kids.
Yes.
Yeah, he's got those too.
But Death Star was fine.
Death Star was fine. Death Commander.
Star Destroyer. There's a lot of aggressive sounding names.
Yeah, but they didn't always put that on the toy packaging right off. You couldn't buy a Death Star right away. You could buy a Death Commander.
Death Commander, yes.
But, yep, this is going to auction on Wednesday, February 1st. It's kind of really cool because
it's awesome.
You can look through the catalog of the website and see the lots, and the figures are in good condition. I mean, the ones that yellowed are because all of them at that time period.
Return of the Jedi and Power of the Force, for some reason, the bubbles always start to yellow. Not always, but it seems like 9 times out of 10 they're yellowed, whereas Empire and Star Wars backs don't, which is so strange. Tells you they probably started using some cheaper plastic later on.
But yeah, that collection looks amazing. I kept asking Thor if he wanted to show me. Does he have a random closet in the
I
house
forgot
filled
about?
with vintage figures? Because
Yeah.
I'd be interested in those.
I had a bucket of figures that were beaten together and with loose joints and paint coming off, and I used to freeze them. I think I've told that story before.
Oh, you have.
I used to freeze them in the freezer
Yep.
to replicate carbonite freezing.
Yeah,
My
sticking your action
Chewbacca,
figure
for
in
whatever
an
reason,
ice cube tray.
yeah,
sounds
for
like a
whatever
great
reason,
idea.
Chewbacca's arms and legs turned green after doing that. I don't know. Has anybody else ever had this experience?
Maybe a lot of people didn't submerge.
Come
their
on,
action
somebody else
figures.
submerged them in like a cup of water and put it in the freezer and then watched it slowly melt. No? Well, I didn't watch it slowly. I'd play in the backyard, actually. I'd set up this elaborate thing, and I'd get the hose and like, oh, he's getting thawed out.
Oh my goodness! I'm done
Maybe
with
you edit this out. I don't know. This is too much. But no, if anybody else ever had a Chewbacca that they froze, don't ask me why I froze Chewbacca. I know.
Should've
I know.
froze Han.
It's Han. But I froze Chewbacca too. Han didn't want to be alone in carbonite. So I froze Chewbacca too, and when I thawed him, he had green arms and legs. Huh. Anyway, I think that's all we got for you this time.
Thank goodness.
So do take to the comments below and tell us what you think of any and all of today's news, or tell me about your green Chewbacca. Whatever the case may be, again, leave your comments below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.
I don't know why, but asking people to tell us about their green Chewbacca sounds a little dirty.